Tonight, if you have a child, or if you ever plan to, you already know exactly where that child will come from. You know the biology, you know the mechanics. You learned it in school, or from a book, or from someone who sat you down and explained it. But here is the thing. For most of human history, nobody sat anyone down. There were no books, there were no schools, and yet the species survived. So how exactly did ancient humans know how to reproduce? The real answer is far stranger than you think. Your first instinct might be to say instinct. Animals reproduce without being taught. A deer does not attend a class. A wolf does not read a pamphlet. So surely early humans just followed the same biological drive and figured it out. And you would be half right. The physical act itself does not require instruction. Your body knows what to do. Evolution spent millions of years making sure of that. But here is where it gets complicated. Knowing how to have sex is not the same as knowing that sex causes pregnancy. And for a very long time, your ancestors had absolutely no idea those two things were connected. Think about the gap. A human pregnancy lasts 9 months. 9 months between the act and the visible result. For comparison, a rabbit gestates in about a month. A mouse in 3 weeks. For those animals, the connection between mating and offspring is almost immediately obvious. But 9 months is a long time. Long enough to forget. Long enough to disconnect cause from effect entirely. And in a world without calendars, without writing, without any formal way to track time, 9 months might as well have been an eternity. Anthropologist David Graeber, in his work on early human social structures, argued that many assumptions we make about prehistoric knowledge are projections of our own modern frameworks. We assume ancient people reasoned the way we do. They did not. Their world was saturated with spirits, cycles, and forces that modern minds no longer see. Pregnancy, in that world, could easily be attributed to a river, a dream, a particular fruit, or the moment a woman stepped into the wind at dawn. And this was not ignorance. This was a different kind of knowing. Across dozens of cultures studied by anthropologists in the 19th and 20th centuries, researchers found something astonishing. There were societies where the concept of biological paternity simply did not exist. Not because the people were primitive, but because their entire framework for understanding life and birth had nothing to do with male contribution at all. The Trobriand Islanders of the Pacific, documented extensively by Bronislaw Malinowski in the early 1900s, believed that pregnancy was caused by ancestral spirits entering a woman's body through water. Men were not considered necessary for conception. Sex was understood as pleasurable, as social, as important for many reasons, but making a baby was not one of them. Let that settle for a moment. An entire society of people living, thriving, raising children, building culture, with no concept that fathers were biologically responsible for those children existing. And the Trobriand Islanders were not alone. Researchers have documented similar beliefs among certain Aboriginal Australian groups, among some communities in the Amazon, and in various matrilineal societies across Africa and Asia. The pattern appears in enough separate places that anthropologists gave it a name. They called it parthenogenesis belief, or more commonly, the ignorance of paternity, though that phrase carries a bias. These were not ignorant people. They had a model of the world that was internally consistent and deeply functional. It just happened to be wrong about the biology. So when did humans first understand the actual connection? This is where it gets genuinely fascinating, because the evidence suggests that the discovery of paternity, the moment humans first connected sex to pregnancy in a causal biological way, may have been one of the most significant cognitive leaps in all of human history. Some researchers believe it happened independently in different places at different times. Others believe it spread through early agricultural societies, as humans began keeping animals and observing them closely. Think about what farming did to human perception. When you keep a herd of goats, you see everything. You see which males mate with which females. You see those females become pregnant. You control the timing, and about 5 months later, you see the kids born. The connection becomes hard to miss when you are managing it deliberately. You can even test it. Keep a female separated. No pregnancy. Introduce a male. Pregnancy follows. This is not abstract reasoning. This is direct empirical observation, repeated season after season. Archaeologist Timothy Taylor, in his work on the prehistory of sex, proposed that the controlled breeding of domesticated animals gave early agricultural humans a laboratory they never had before. And in that laboratory, over generations, the idea of paternity began to crystallize, not as a biological concept in the modern sense, but as a practical one. The male contributes something. What that something is would remain mysterious for thousands of years more. But that it existed, that it mattered, began to be understood, and then something shifted in human society that we can still see the echoes of today. Once paternity became a known concept, it became a problem. Because if a man could father children, if his lineage could continue through his offspring, then suddenly it mattered very much which children were his. This is, many historians argue, one of the deep roots of patriarchal control over women's sexuality, not some inevitable biological destiny, but a historical response to a new piece of knowledge. The moment men understood they could be fathers, they became concerned with ensuring that they were, and entire social systems, laws, customs, taboos, and rituals began to form around that concern. You can see remnants of this transition in ancient texts. The Code of Hammurabi, one of the oldest written legal codes, dating to around 1754 BCE, contains detailed laws about adultery and paternity. In ancient Rome and Greece, the concept of legitimate versus illegitimate children was legally and socially consequential in ways that would have been meaningless in a world without paternity knowledge. The shift from matrilineal to patrilineal inheritance structures, which appears to have happened across many societies over thousands of years, tracks with the spread of this understanding. But here is the twist that almost nobody thinks about. Even after humans understood that sex caused pregnancy in a general sense, they did not understand the actual biology until shockingly recently. The idea that a woman contributed an egg to reproduction was not confirmed until 1827, when Carl Ernst von Baer identified the mammalian ovum for the first time. Before that, for most of recorded history, the dominant scientific theory was that the male seed contained a tiny, fully formed human being, called a homunculus, and the woman was simply the vessel that grew it. The sperm were not even discovered until 1677, when Antony von Leeuwenhoek peered through his microscope and saw them moving. So for the vast stretch of human history, even the people who believed in paternity, even the philosophers and physicians and scholars, had it profoundly wrong about the details. Your ancestors did not understand reproduction the way you do. Your brain carries the inheritance of a species that once believed children came from spirits, from rivers, from wind and water, and the will of unseen forces. And for most of those ancestors, that belief worked. It held communities together. It organized kinship. It gave meaning to birth and death in a world that offered no textbooks. The knowledge you carry right now, that a sperm fertilizes an egg, that chromosomes split and combine, that DNA from two people folds together into something new, that knowledge is younger than you probably realize. It is the product of microscopes and laboratories, and centuries of careful, disputed, often wrong science. And even with all of it, even with every diagram and every textbook and every high school biology class, the moment a child is actually born still feels, to most people who experience it, like something beyond explanation. Tonight, somewhere on this planet, a child is being born, and the person holding that newborn probably does not think about chromosomes or gametes or von Baer's discovery in 1827. They think about something older than any of that, something that felt the same to a human standing in a cave 40,000 years ago, looking down at a new life and wondering, in the way only humans wonder, how something like this is even possible. The answer has changed many times. The wondering never has.